Hi, and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 235, and today's date is December 10th, 2013, and the title of this episode is U.S. Going After Other Countries to Report Hidden Assets. And before I get started, I just want to welcome all those new people from YouTube who are subscribing or who haven't subscribed or are just listening. You can come over to the x22report.com site. I do post the audio version before the YouTube version, and the audio version on the x22report.com site is normally posted between 5 and 7 o'clock. And then I go ahead and I compile the YouTube version, and sometimes YouTube is fast and sometimes it's slow, and last night it was actually very slow and it didn't post until like after midnight or so. So if you'd like to hear it earlier, just come over to the x22report.com site. For those people who donated over the weekend, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for donating. It helps keep the site going. I run the forum, which is the people, which is located on the tabs. If you go to the x22report.com site, you'll see the tab that says the people. That is part of the x22report.com site and the main site, x22report.com site. Again, this is a one-man show. It's just me. I'm doing it all by myself, and I really, really do appreciate the donation that was given this weekend. Thank you so much. And let's get into the economic collapse news. What we're seeing out in Greece is that since the unemployment rate is so high, it's around 27%, and what we're seeing right now is that 25% of the Greek people are either not on health insurance anymore or can't afford health coverage. And what is happening, it's putting children and pregnant women in danger, and the people out in Greece, they're very worried about the number of people who have lost access to social insurance. And what we are seeing is that on average, 3 women out of 10 between the ages of 25 and 44 are out of work. Men are out of work, and we're having a total unemployment around 27%. The youth unemployment is above 60%. So again, this is very tough out there, and we see that the methods of the central bank do not work. Bailing out, bailing in, austerity gives you high unemployment, it gives you higher debt, and it makes the people suffer. So there is no good in what is happening out there. And right now, Cyprus is to get the third tranche of 100 million euro. The Eurogroup has approved a third bailout for Cyprus of 100 million euro before the end of 2013. And we have to remember that Cyprus did do the bail-in. So they had bail-ins and bailouts, and they still cannot get this going here in Cyprus because they are heading down the same path as Greece. And if we look at other countries like France and Portugal and Spain and Italy, we are seeing the same exact things. We are seeing it take effect in Germany and in UK, and in the US we're just manipulating all the numbers completely, so everyone is oblivious to what is really happening here, and all eyes on the stock market, and hopefully the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ keep going higher, and people believe that everything is getting better. So the United States right now, the central bankers, need revenue. They are looking for money, and they have given the Swiss banks a deadline to disclose hidden assets to the U.S., and about 300 Swiss banks had until the end of Monday to determine whether to give the United States records of Americans hiding assets there, as Washington threatens institutions with legal action and also penalties if they do not disclose this information. And pursuant to a deal between the nations, Swiss banks can avoid U.S. prosecution by volunteering account information on American clients, along with paying a fine. The penalty equals between 20 and 50% of the value of the undeclared accounts based on when they were conceived. If a bank opened up an undeclared account before 2009, when the Swiss bank giant UBS was fined $780 million by the U.S. for tax evasion, it would have faced a lower penalty. So they are looking everywhere for money. And right now, most of the larger banks are cooperating. and they're going along with this, and some of the smaller banks aren't. And one of the banks that agreed to the U.S. pressure, who was being pressured, of course, by giving over this information, was the Swiss regional lender Valiant Bank has agreed to voluntarily disclose those people who put money into the bank who have been avoiding taxes. And the Swiss financial regulator FINMA is expecting a number of banks to agree to the U.S. clearance examination on any past transgressions and faces fines which can be up to 50% of the assets depending on how these banks acted in their dealings with American customers. So we can see what the central bankers are doing right now. They need money. The U.S. government needs the money to sustain the huge amount of debt that is taken on by the U.S. government, because they cannot slow this down. They cannot pay the interest on this debt with the tax revenues from the people, so now they are looking everywhere for this money. Now, there was an article out from the New York Times, and what they reported is that the number of children who are homeless right now is now more than when the Great Depression happened. There are about 1.2 million public school kids in America that are homeless, and that number has gone up by about 72% since the start of the last recession. So right now, we're coming out of the recession. It's a recovery. We're not in a depression, but there's 1.2 million public school kids that are homeless, and this is more than the Great Depression. But not to worry, the Fed is going to help the country out. The president has come out and said that the Fed is putting the Volker rule into place, and this will allow the banks to self-regulate themselves. And this goes on to say that it requires banking entities to establish an internal compliance program designed to help ensure and monitor compliance with the prohibitions and restrictions of the statute and the final rule. And right now, the Volcker rule passed by all 5 regulators, and Obama says this rule will make financial system much safer and it will help the American people. I just can't believe him right now. And for banks to be self-regulating themselves, that is not going to work whatsoever. This is a BS rule, and this will not do anything with what's going on right now. Now, South Carolina is voting on a bill to end Obamacare, and a bill set for the fast-track passage in the South Carolina Senate in January aims to eliminate Obamacare in the state. House Bill 3101, titled the South Carolina Freedom of Healthcare Protection Act, passed the state House Representatives, and it is looking to go forward and to be passed and put into law. And what the Supreme Court said in Prince v. United States is that states are not merely political subdivisions of the federal government to carry out what the federal government does. They are sovereign entities, and Congress can pass laws, but it cannot compel the states to utilize either their treasury or personnel to implement those federal laws. Basically, the states can do whatever they want. They do not need to follow every single law that the federal government passes. They have their voice. And again, this goes with anything, any law that is being pushed forward and onto the states. Now, DARPA has designed a giant foldable satellite capable of surveilling 40% of the Earth. The U.S. Department of Defense has designed the next generation satellite capable of observing 40% of the Earth, and they can do this all at one time. And it does this in real time, and it can do it anywhere on the planet, which is quite amazing. And they can spy and focus in and see what is going on, and they can look at a lot going on at once. Okay, now There was a video of the Italian people. They were protesting, and the riot police were called out to stop them. It was a anti-EU protest, and we're probably going to see a lot more of these going on. I mean, we're going to see people who are just fed up with the central bankers, and they want a change. And the Italian people were protesting. The riot police were called out. The riot police actually joined in with the protest and took off their helmet and joined in on the march. And that just goes to show you that, if we can band everyone together and march together, it is a strong voice. And if the police are not against the people and with the people, real change can happen. Now, Hagel is threatening Pakistan because, they're using drone attacks in Pakistan, and the Pakistani people are saying this is absolutely ridiculous. You're killing supposedly terrorists, but you're also killing a mass amount of civilians, and this has to stop. So Hagel is now threatening the Pakistani government, saying that, just keep your mouth shut, or we will cut off the $1.6 billion worth of aid that we give to your country. And again, this has nothing to do with terrorists. These drone attacks in Yemen, Pakistan, all these different areas are keeping the people who want change down, who do not want the U.S. government, the central bankers in their country, who do not want their natural resources being sold using the U.S. dollar, who do not want a private central western bank in their country. And this is why the empire of the United States needs to keep and continually have a presence and use force against these people. And we see it in many of the countries. Because once they put their puppet regime into power, they need to keep them there. And we can see what happens all across the Middle East. Right now, the U.S. is losing control. It has lost control in Egypt. Saudi Arabia is talking to other nations like China and Russia. Egypt, again, has made a deal with Russia for military assets, and it's allowing them to use their ports to dock Russian ships, and they're also receiving aid from Russia. So we can see what is happening, and the U.S. now is expanding, and they need to get more nations using the U.S. dollar. They need to get more nations to set up private Western central banks to keep this entire system going. So they are moving into Central Africa and into other African nations because they have natural resources, and there are other countries that are making the same move. China is spending billions upon billions of dollars down in Africa to help with the infrastructure, and they've already made Kenya the clearinghouse for the yuan. So we can see how this is all starting to come together, and everyone is making a mad dash rush to get these natural resources. The empire of the United States is trying to keep the U.S. dollar from collapsing. The Chinese are making their move to put the yuan as the next reserve currency of the world. And we understand that in Afghanistan, the United States is never going to withdraw the troops from there because they have the world's third largest copper mine. China is there helping the Afghan people mine. There's also the poppy fields, which they use to produce opium, which allows them to pay for covert operations. And right now, Washington, is going to leave around 14 to 16,000 U.S. troops, and they will remain in Afghanistan fighting anti-terrorism. And again, Washington right now admits there's only about 50 al-Qaeda members in Afghanistan. So we need 14 to 16,000 troops there, or are they really there to guard the poppy fields, to guard the natural resources? That makes a little bit more sense right now. And since the U.S. needs to keep this entire system operating, and the central bankers do not want to leave this area, Hagel decided of course, with other approvals, decided to give the President Karzai a little bit more time to sign the resolution that will allow the U.S. troops to stay there. It was supposed to be signed by the end of December, but he's giving the president now till the end of February because the president had concerns on some security concerns about U.S. soldiers just going into people's homes without warrants or any cause or for any reason whatsoever. They were just going to knock down the door, go in there, and do searches and without any type of reasoning. And he had concerns about this, and of course the U.S. government wants to keep this the way it is, this agreement, because it makes it easier for them to do things. And of course they would never do this in the U.S., but they have no problem doing this in other countries. Now, Russia is out there and it is blasting the West for interference in the Ukraine. They are saying they are aggravating the situation. They are pushing the situation further, and they're interfering with Ukraine's internal affairs. And we know they're doing this. This is happening all over the place. It seems every time you see like an uprising, it's always because the central bankers are not getting their way. We're now seeing it happen in Singapore. We have to remember China and Singapore merged their markets together to push the yuan further as the reserve currency of the world, and all of a sudden Singapore had some riots. The Ukraine decided to go with to turn down the EU, and then all of a sudden you saw riots and the people rioting that we want the EU because the EU was able to put all the Eurozone nations into debt. It allowed those nations to go into double-digit unemployment. The people are suffering, so we want the same thing. It doesn't make sense. Now, China is holding war games near the Korean border. China's military is holding a large-scale military maneuvers near the Korean border. U.S. military intelligence assets in Asia, including satellites, aircraft, and ships, are monitoring the war games that are happening right now. And the maneuvers are taking place near China's northeastern border with North Korea. And again, all these countries are having these drills, practicing and showing and flexing their muscles to the other nations, saying, hey, look what we can do here, because we have to understand that the central bankers, the U.S. government, eventually are going to start the war, and China's going to be involved, Iran's going to be involved, Russia's going to be involved, Syria's going to be involved, all these nations, Europe is going to be involved, UK. It will be World War III because we understand that the U.S. dollar is imploding at this time, and the only way out for the central bankers is to take all eyes off of themselves and the U.S. government, and they need to start some type of war. And also you have to remember, if they do start the war with, when they start the war with China and other nations like Russia, these countries hold trillions of dollars of the United States debt. And if we are in war with them, they can just say, you know what? We don't have to pay you back. We don't have to give you anything. It's null and void at this point. And again, the central bankers will profit from both sides of the war, and when the war's over, they just want to reset the system and start the whole Ponzi scheme over again, and this is their plan. Now, the U.S. and the Pentagon is saying that they need a new missile defense system, and they need a new radar system to detect any long-range missiles that North Korea may fire against the United States. The U.S. military presently fields an early warning radar at the base in northern Japan and is planning on deploying a second long-range sensor within the year at another site in the East Asian country. And what the U.S. is also doing is they have plans to set up a missile base in Guam. and this is going to counter the strength of China. U.S. is planning to station an anti-ballistic missile system on the Pacific island of Guam, and it is going to be used for North Korea and to counter any type of aggressive nature from China. Okay. Now, the financial regulators are, they warn of cyber threats, and they've warned about this many, many times over. And what they're saying right now is more must be done to protect the U.S. financial system against the following threat of cyber attacks. Government and industry officials warn an interagency panel of regulators on Monday, and they say the danger posed by outside forces looking to damage the financial system has become much greater. Our experience over the last couple of years shows that cyber threats to financial institutions and markets are growing in both frequency and sophistication. Cyber risk is increasing in pace, complexity. Potential impact has moved from fraudsters to hacktivists, causing disruptions to nation states, threatening serious data manipulation and destruction. And we understand that, yes, there is going to be some type of false flag, and it will involve some type of cyber attack because they've been warning about this for many years. Many government officials are out there telling us about hits on the power grid. They recently had drills on the power grid. They've had cyber attack drills with banks. They've had Quantum 1 and Quantum Dawn 2 cyber drills. And you can see that this is all getting prepared for the next cyber attack. And they need this to blame the collapse on another country. And this is why they are ramping up for the next false flag event that will eventually happen coming very soon, and this will be a multi-pronged type of attack. It will probably consist of some type of chemical weapons, because we have to remember CNN reported that Assad has been, storing a huge cache of chemical weapons that the UN inspectors don't know about. They let that leak. We have all the propaganda of Al-Qaeda all over the country in lone wolf groups. We have Al-Qaeda coming across the border of Canada, and most of them are bomb makers. We have American people who are fighting in Syria coming back, and they could have been radicalized, and they can't track all these people. And you can just see how they're playing all this up. And we have to remember there was that memo that Al-Qaeda forces were taking dry runs on planes, and DHS and the TSA just said, don't worry about it, it's not a big deal. And we can see how this is all playing into what is eventually going to happen. Now, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Putin met, and they were discussing many different things, and one of them happens to be that Al-Qaeda in Syria has got hold of some sarin nerve gas, and they are ready to use it. And they are very nervous about the Sochi Olympics happening in Russia, and the Prime Minister of Israel was warning Putin that something might happen, that these Al-Qaeda, could move into Russia to send some type of message at the Olympics. So Russia right now, the president decided that Russia is going to position its cutting-edge Tor-M air defense system to protect the venues of the 22nd Winter Olympics that will open in Sochi. And the Tor-M is a tactical weapon designed to detect, track, and destroy all kinds of ballistic and cruise missiles, aerial bombs, drones, and conventional aircraft, including ones employing stealth technology. So the Russian government is taking precautions. They're setting up their Tor-M weapon system to protect them for some type of attack on the Olympics at this time. Now, I've been saying this since I started my reporting here, is that government officials never really tell us the truth. It's usually always the opposite of certain things. And here are some of the 10 worst economic predictions that occurred, and it usually ended up to be the opposite of what they are telling us. Number 10, Ben Bernanke, 10th of January 2008, the Federal Reserve is currently now forecasting a recession. A few months later, the United States entered one of the worst recessions ever. Number 9, Herbert Hoover, 1928. The United States are nearer to the final triumph over poverty than ever before in the history of any land. The Great Depression started a year after. Stocks lost almost 80% under his presidency. Number 8, James Glassman and Kevin Hassett. Stocks, and this is in 1999, stocks are now in the midst of a one-time only rise to much higher ground, to the neighborhood of 36,000 on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. According to their estimates, the Dow Jones was supposed to reach 36,000 points. The following years were marked by the internet bubble. The Dow went down from 10,000 to 7,200. Number 7, George W. Bush, 15th of July, 2008. We can have confidence in the long-term foundation of our economy. I think the system basically is sound. I truly do. This sentence was pronounced exactly 2 months before the bankruptcy of Lehman Brothers. Number 6, Donald Luskin, September 14th, 2008. Anyone who says we're in a recession or heading into one, especially the worst one since the Great Depression, is making up his own private definition of recession. According to Luskin, Obama deliberately worsened economic figures to discredit McCain for the presidential election that took place 2 months later. Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy the next day. Number 5, Irving Fisher, October 15, 1929. Stock prices have reached what looks like a permanently high plateau. The crash of 1929 began the following week, the Dow Jones losing up to 85% of its value from the permanent plateau. Number 4, David LaRue, August 12, 2005. I truly believe the housing market will continue to expand, but rather than double-digit price appreciation we've seen, we might see that drop to 5 or 6% appreciation sometime toward the end of next year. Real estate prices fell sharper between 2006 and 2008 than during the Great Depression. Number 3, Joseph Cassano. It is hard for us, without being flippant, to even see a scenario with any kind of realm of reason that would see us losing $1 in any of these credit default swap transactions. The following year, AIG was rescued by the government after huge losses, especially on CDS positions. Number 2, Franklin Reyes. This is the CEO of Fannie Mae. June 10th, 2004. The subprime assets are so riskless that their capital for holding them should be under 2%. The U.S. government intervened in 2008 to rescue Fannie Mae in big trouble during the subprime crisis. Number 1, David Wu. This is an analyst at Bank of America, December 5th, 2013, about Bitcoin. Our fair value analysis implies a price of $1,300. And there you have it. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.